it's good morning over here, good afternoon, good evening, good night. My name is Karen A, and I'm here in Jerusalem, and this is the Afro-Euro Reco12 podcast. Reco12 is a family of recovery resources that brings to you speakers, recovered members, and fellows sharing from all addictions, all afflictions. We have this here live today, but if you go to Reco12.com, you could find amazing recordings from Noodle It Out with Nikki, Reco12 with Justin. You could find speakers from the Spiritual Cartel, from Young Sponsee Group, from Cameron's Group, from CA, OA, AA, compulsive overeaters, anorexics, bulimics, gamblers, workaholics, hoarders, Emotions Anonymous, codependents, Al-Anons, and more. What most of us have in common is that we've all found relief through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, most of us working the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, although I have certainly hosted here people who have used other literature such as, CODA, DA, methodologies, and all that jazz. And we're happy to hear your recovery story, whatever you worked. Like I said, most of us have recovered working the steps through the big books of Alcoholics Anonymous. So have I. And we practice these principles in all of our affairs, looking to do our new job well, being of maximum service to God and his fellows. If you'd like to check out our recordings, like I said, you could check us out at Reco12.com. We've got a bunch of regular meetings in U.S. time zones, and this is in the Afro-Euro time zone. And of course, recordings you could hear anytime. If you'd like to contribute a seventh tradition, you could do that there at Reco12.com/support. And we do accept PayPal and Venmo that help cover the cost of the platform to host the recordings and, the Zooms and all that stuff. If you'd like to speak on the Afro-Euro Reco12, or you want to send me your sponsees, I'm counting on you, Lee. Send them my way. I'm always looking for new speakers starting September, back to school. You can get back into the solution. Lee said he was a teacher, so, little joke there. Back to school in September if you have some new recovery learnings for us to get our learn on. I'm happy to get names of speakers, or just send your sponsees, your fellows, your gurus directly to me. Alternately, you can record a little speak pipe thingy on the Reco12.com website, and that's like a sample thing, and that goes over to Justin, and then he approves you. But really, you could just reach out to me if you're recovered and you have experience, strength, and hope to share. Hit me up. I'll put my number in the chat. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Lee H. You're in the UK, is that right?
That is right.
Amazing. Lee H. The UK is going to tell us his topic, then he's going to share for 30 minutes. That time you can write your questions in the chat if you don't want to forget them, or you can ask them live at the end, and I'll let you know a couple minutes before you're up. And then we can look at the chat to see any questions, or you guys could just unmute one by one and get some inspiration, some direction, some solution based on Lee's experience, strength, and hope. Welcome.
Thank you, Karen. What a great introduction. So yeah, my name is Lee. I'm grateful recovered addict today. I'd just like to thank you personally for inviting me to speak here. I've actually listened to a few of those recordings, and they're a great resource. So just to plug what Karen said, if you do need some additional support, or you want to hear some great speakers, please go onto their website. I said that I'm a grateful recovered addict today because, it mentions in the book the word recovered a fair few times, and I used to use recovering when I was going through the steps. But the reason I say recovered today is because, I know there is no cure for my illness, for my spiritual malady. I was searching for years for a cure for this, and I don't have one, but what I do have is a daily reprieve to be able to keep me clean and sober for just a 24-hour period. And it's actually really helpful for me to just focus on a series of 24 hours, rinse, repeat, than, clinging on to clean time, because I came into my program in August of 2023. And my sober date is actually the 6th of January 2024 because I relapsed a few times because I just wasn't fully conceding to my innermost self that I was of the hopeless variety. And I clung to a little bit of clean time, I clung to meetings, I wasn't really doing the work. But the topic that I've chose today is transmuting hatred into love. And the reason that I picked that topic is, for me, that's exactly what the 12-step fellowships, the big book, sponsorship, service, unity, the whole recovery package has done for me in my life. You know, I spent 22 years using and drinking and acting out. I'm a recovered drug addict, alcoholic, sex and love addict. So all addictions and afflictions. I'm an everything addict. And, you know, I joke that I went to a party in the year 2000 and didn't really come home until 2024, but that's actually the truth of it. And yeah, my heart was filled with hatred for the world, hatred for, you know, hatred for substances and alcohol itself, hatred for people, my upbringing. And it was that hateful outlook that kept me sick for so long. And although I had loving relationships in my life, my heart was blocked off from the sunlight of the spirit. I wasn't allowing love in. And the person that I hated the most, and I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about this and my story, my recovery journey, but the person that I hated the most wasn't anybody else but myself. And I firmly believe how you feel on the inside pours into your outside world, which is, I guess, why through a lot of the work in step work, we have to take a really, you know, cold, hard look at what's going on internally with us. Because I'm just going to quote real quick. One of the most profound quotes that I ever come across in recovery, which I heard from a really close friend of mine doing the main share, but it's always stuck with me. And it is this: if I don't heal from the things that hurt me, I will continue to bleed on those that didn't cut me. And I'll just say that one more time. If I don't heal from the things that hurt me, I will continue to bleed on those that never cut me. And that just rung true with me. And that was quite early days. And I thought, wow, that's literally how I've been living my life. I've been bleeding out everywhere as an untreated addict, onto my health, onto my finances, onto my relationships, my job, every aspect of my life, all because I had not healed, I had not done the work from the things that have affected me. And when I come into recovery, there's another, I looked around the room and I tried to think about, what is this thing that we suffer with, addiction, alcoholism? What, where does it come from? Why the fellows within, these fellowships, why do we have this malady? Because I used to think, is it to do with adverse life experiences? And I thought it can't be, because I look at, example, my grandmother, who's had a very traumatic life experience, adopted. Her younger sister was just a few days old when she was put into adoption. Another sister of her died at 6 years of age. She lost her husband, my granddad, in an air traffic accident over in Libya. She's domestically abused. The list goes on. But my grandmother has never turned to alcohol and drugs for a solution to her problems. And I was like, if anyone has a reason to drink or use drugs or act out, it's definitely this woman. And then I've met many beautiful fellows in recovery who, they'd sit down in meetings and hold their hands up and say, my life on paper is, been quite good. I've come from the same two-parent stable home, great finances, great education, no real adverse childhood experiences. Yet they're still sat in the same 12-step meeting as me. Their disease is still taken into the same dark depths of depravity and destroyed their life like me. So that got me thinking. I don't believe that alcoholism or addiction, personally for me, comes from having adverse life experiences. But I will tell you this: by the time you arrive in the rooms of these meetings, or the time you find recovery, you definitely will enter traumatized. If you didn't have trauma before, being a full-time alcoholic addict definitely will traumatize you, the damage you do to all aspects of your life and those around you, but mostly yourself. So that got me thinking back to, okay, for me, where must this have centered? You know, it's centered in the mind, but where's my behavior come from then? And I believe I was born with this spiritual malady, with this sickness, with this, disease thinking, because this is the illness of more and now. Addiction, alcoholism, we want more of everything. We're never satisfied with just a bit, and we want it now. We want that instant gratification. And when I was a little child, I'm the oldest of four siblings, and my father always jokes, telling this infamous story that, when the Easter eggs are lined on the kitchen side, like a couple of days before Easter, he said he always knew Lee tried to get to that egg because there wouldn't just be one egg missing. It'd be a tiny little bit from all four eggs, and that's how we knew it was you. Your brothers and sisters would have just stolen one egg. You had to have it all, and you were never satisfied. And even though it's funny to laugh at, that was before I discovered drugs and alcohol. I was about 5. But if I was, seeking and never satisfied in the way that I was as a child, I was very irritable, restless, and discontented as a child. I had undiagnosed ADHD as well, but my mindset was just, I was never happy or satisfied. So I think it's only inevitable that I was going to go on to have the using career that I did have. But I'm going to try and bring everything back to my topic, because I like that you have a topic here. So I said it's transmuting hatred into love. So in untreated addiction and my life before recovery, which was very hate-filled, what did that look like for me? Well, I came from divorced parents from a very young age. There was a lot of violence in my home, which for me, you look to your parents for an example of love. I saw violence, saw police round, so it normalized for me unhealthy interactions as normality. And then when I was about 7, I got presented with a birth certificate with my name on, but there was a different surname, and I was told that your father isn't your biological father and you have a different father, but your name was changed to protect you because, he's not a particularly nice guy and has threatened to come and find you and shoot you if he ever found you. And I was like, okay, this is a lot for a 7-year-old child. When you're 7, what should be your biggest problem, whether you are getting milk and cookies at break at school or not? So, that fueled mistrust and hatred for everyone. I was angry at my mum. I was angry at my, adopted dad. Everybody in my family at this point really, really like socially cut off from my peers because I just felt very different. And I blamed myself a lot. And I think that's where the absence of love and the hatred for myself came in. I blamed myself for what happened. And then flash forward a couple of years. So when I was 10, 11, and my grandfather passed away in a traffic accident. He worked in Libya. Um, and he worked there for 20 years on an oil rig, a month at work, a month at home. And yeah, very tragic way to die. And that tore my family apart. 4 months after that, I was raped by an older family member in front of his photograph. And I kept that secret. It says, I've heard it so much in recovery and I firmly believe it, that secrets keep us sick. And they really do. I kept that secret for 20 years. I didn't tell any of my family members because I've seen them broken apart by the tragic, my mum by the tragic death of her father and things. So all these things, I entered like early adolescence as a teenager at age 12, so broken, so full of hatred. I hated that I felt I had to keep, what happened to me secret, that, I was misunderstood, etc. And that's when I discovered my first drink. My first drink when I was 12, and that sense of ease and comfort that it gave me was indescribable. And in true addict sense, I had my first, the first drug I ever tried was speed at age 12, which, most kids, most teenagers go, let's smoke a cigarette or, a sip of beer or something. Well, I'm not most teenagers, so I went straight in for that. And, if you look up what addiction is in the dictionary or like on Google, it'll describe it as something along the lines of a chronic relapsing condition or disorder. So I say that again, a chronic relapsing condition or disorder. So chronic means that it's only going to get worse, never better. And relapsing means it's just going to keep coming back again and again until I do something about it, which for me is the spiritual solution that I apply today. However, if you go to a doctor and they diagnose you with a chronic relapsing disorder, it doesn't fill me with much hope, the chronic relapsing bit. But I find my hope in the disorder or condition part of that definition because, conditions can change. The weather can go from, hailing down a thunderstorm to beautiful sunshine within the same 24-hour period. Disorderly, things can move from the disorderly, from chaos to the orderly. And that's where I find my hope with that. But like I said, it is a chronic relapsing, it's a progressive illness. And so I started, taking drugs, alcohol, having consensual sex from a very young age because, the non-consensual interaction, normalized sexual behavior from a young age for me. So I just thought it was normal for me at age 14 then to be going to nightclubs. If you're wondering how I got in, I was one of those goth kids that used to paint their face like Heath Ledger from Joker, so no one knew how old I was. I didn't need an ID because, I looked like something out of a Tim Burton film. So I thought that going to nightclubs when I was 14 and taking, ecstasy, MDMA, all these party drugs was normal behavior. It's newsflash, it is not normal behavior. But I was living like I was a 30-year-old as a 14-year-old. And I can't sit here on a meeting and pretend like I didn't love it. I absolutely loved drugs and alcohol, but they did not love me, hence why I'm here today and I'm recovered. But the illness, it does get worse. It got progressively worse. So, I went to university, studied twice, got a music degree, and I got a teaching qualification. However, I used to, like the sickness in our mind, I always used to tell myself, I'm not like other addicts. I'm not like those crackheads on the street. I'm not like those alcoholics sat in the park because you're smart, you're at university, or you've got things, or this, that, and the other. And yeah, I was intelligent, but I was the most stupid, dumb user and abuser of substances that I've ever known. Some of the things that I've done. My illness took me to places I wouldn't even go for good. And in my early 20s, when I was at university, studying, at that point, I guess my drinking and my using, it was social. I don't know what point I crossed the line from when you like to party a lot to it becomes a lifestyle. But, I was going out 4 or 5 times a week, like enjoying the shared experience, going to raised parties, and made beautiful memories. But there came a point when you stopped seeing me out as much because I was sat at home using on my own or drinking on my own. And then gradually less and less, my friends started getting less phone calls. I started becoming really protective and stingy with alcohol and substances I didn't want to share. It was not a shared experience. It was me sat in utter isolation. And I spoke about transmuting hatred into love. Obviously, I blamed the world for everything. I would sit there. If I was unrecovered, I'd be sat with you all now going, well, if you'd been through what I'd been through, you'd have done the same. However, I look back at my life circumstances and I now thank God for every single one of them because, a dark past can become your greatest possession. And for me, I don't sit here thinking these things happened to me. Yeah, they did, but they didn't happen to me. They happened for me. They happened for my greatest good. God never sends you more than you can chew. I firmly believe that. And if it feels like that in the moment, it's because you are strong enough to be tested, and there is a greater life lesson once you come out the other side. But yeah, like I said, I stopped going out, stopped going to parties. I started using more and more alone. And like I said earlier, it's a progressive illness. I said I'm not going to be like those crackheads. I'm not going to be like those alcoholics. It was only a matter of time before I was doing exactly those things. I discovered, the drugs that I wouldn't call the party drugs: crack, heroin, methamphetamine, and GHB. And, I was soon putting my belongings in places where you sell them to get quick cash for fixes. There was one point I was working 4 jobs, probably earning on paper the most amount of money that I ever earned, but I had the least to show for it because it was at the height of my using career. And it got too much. It says in the book that we should seek the proper appointed authority. It says, if we have debt, go to a debt counselor, something legal, lawyer or police, something health related, doctor. And I firmly believe that I went to therapy. I broke my silence on my childhood sexual assault. I broke my silence on that and went to this therapy at this really brilliant charity that deals with men only that have been sexually assaulted or raped, because, we don't come forward and just as many men this has happened to as it has our female counterparts. And so, I had EMDR, I had CBT, really helped my PTSD. At this point, I'm running out of letters of the alphabet to describe various aspects of my life. But yeah, so all these acronyms and these letters for therapy and things like that. And it really did help. And I got some, what I would call substantial clean time. But in my fellowship, which is CA, we have an alcohol statement. Although I've spoke about it today, I never thought I was an alcoholic, which says if we swap one substance for another, eventually it becomes a problem drug. When I thought that going to therapy would fix my addiction, and I got like 3, sometimes 6 months of no using chemicals, I look back and I was drinking like 2 bottles of wine a night, 5 nights a week. That's a hell of a lot for someone that's not wanting to label themselves as a drinker. And it just got too much for me, this lifestyle, going to bed plotting, waking up plotting. Oh, if I go to bed tonight, I can pay this person tomorrow and then I can go and get money for this. And then this is going to happen, or I can sell that, buy this back. I can ask that person for money. It's a horrible way to wake up, and it's a horrible way to go to sleep at night. But that was my life. And
got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
I was in some long-term relationships, but whenever I was single, I spoke earlier about being a sex and love addict. I was a validation addict when I was not in a relationship. I used to get into relationships like any addict does or alcoholic does, thinking they would fix me, and they didn't, because I was untreated myself. And then, not after I'd ruined those relationships, I then was just so promiscuous in my periods of being single, because I'm bringing it back to Haitian love. I didn't know what healthy love looked like. And so I just gave away, what is a God-given power, our sexuality. I just gave it away to just anybody because I wanted to feel something. I wanted to feel loved because I didn't feel it for myself. And this just got too much, this repeated cycle, that I tried to take my own life. It wasn't the first time, but this time it was successful. in 2017. I took an overdose amount of GHB and ended up in intensive care in hospital. I died and been brought back to life and was in a coma. And I came to a few days later, and I look around this intensive care unit, and there's people in neck braces because they've been they've fallen down the stairs. There's people there that have been stabbed, they've been in car crashes, and I'm there through, my own misery. And I prayed then to God. This is before I had a working relationship with my God. I prayed then, why have you brought me back? What is my purpose here? And, untreated, 2 weeks later, I was out there using. I still continued to use until 2023 when I came into my program. And this was 2017. And it got worse and it got worse. And at this point, I loathed myself. I hated everyone even more. I hated my life, hated that I had nothing. I was miserable in every aspect. Anything that was good in my life, I tried to burn down. And it got to a point where just before I came into recovery, I'd had enough, completely enough. I'd quit my teaching job because it was too much stress without enough one to go to. I kept getting in trouble with the police. By the grace of God, I was never arrested. I was just, because I wasn't really a fighter and I wasn't a thief. I was just antisocial in public spaces when I was high, being inappropriately high in a train station, things like that, and just being a weirdo in the public eye. And so, I'd been taken to hospital multiple times, brought home by the police, brought home by ambulances. I got evicted from a property I was living in for property damage because I lost the plot when I had psychosis by police. I was behaving very toxically in a relationship just before recovery. And, I had nothing. I got kicked out, I was homeless and I was jobless. And I was due to go into a rehab centre. And my family said, listen, if you do this, you can come home because you really need to get your life sorted. And then I said, and actually, fear got the better of me and I didn't go to the rehab centre last minute because I decided, for me, I don't have anything against treatment centres. I think they're brilliant. But I decided that if I'm going to go to this treatment centre, my life's a shambles before I go in. When I come out, it's going to be just the same. And that scared me. And I had a support worker at the time, and he said, you literally have two options. One, continue to the bitter end, like it says in the book, and die soon, which you will. Insanity or death. I've been sectioned and I've died. I've been to both of those gates. Thankfully, I'm here today, far from, but I know that this illness could take me back there in a heartbeat if I don't keep on top of my stuff. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So I was due to go into the treatment centre. And like I said, they said, you will either die or you need to find a meeting. So I was like, right, I'll find a meeting. I've done a bit of NA, which is Narcotics Anonymous, in my early 20s, but somebody broke the anonymity statement, which is very important. It does keep people out of the rooms. It kept me out of the rooms for 9 years. So I found this meeting and it was a book study. I loved that book, but that terrified me. I don't know about anybody else. My first ever meeting, book study, and I turned up. And literally, they're waving a big blue book in my face. I'm on a horrific come down, scared, shaking, sweating. They're talking about you need to awaken to a higher power. And I'm like, you want me to be awake? I've been awake for 22 years. I need sleep and some water. That's what I need. And then they were talking about, all these phrases keep coming back. It helps me to help you. And I thought, this is strange. But I'll tell you something, though. Do you know what kept me? This is where I first felt something which I would later go on to describe as love in the rooms. What kept me coming back originally was not the 12 steps, was not the big book, was not God. It was actually all of you. It was the fellows in the room. Like I said, I've been to counselors and therapists and things like that. And they, I'd never really bought someone trying to give me relapse prevention techniques from a doctor who's never even smoked a joint when I've, sniffed drugs off a dirty floor and things like that. I could never relate. I was like, you don't know what it's like. When I sat in a fellowship and I listened to recovered alcoholics and addicts talking to me about how they they'd been to prison, or they lost their kids and they've got their kids back now, and they're doing community service, and they're CEO of like this business. And I'm like, okay, I can get on board with this. These people understand me, and that you're saying your life's like this now, but what you're describing is worse than what I was up to. Okay. It was the intrigue and the message from others that kept me coming back. So I got to work, I got a sponsor. I did the work. I relapsed a couple of times in step 4 because I was still fearful around, wrote everybody out in my step 4. But the one person that I wrote the name and never finished writing about them was the family member that raped me when I was a kid. And, after my 4th relapse, I looked and I thought, this person is still affecting your life. You're still allowing hatred for yourself and the incident and this person into your life. You can't allow that. I finally finished that resentment, and I finished my steps within 2 weeks, and I was sponsoring, and that was almost 19 months ago, and I've not picked up a drink or a drug since. And I have healthy boundaries in relationships now. So I know I've not got long left, but I just want to talk. I feel like that's my whole hatred journey for you. I want to talk a bit about love now. And I want to talk about love within the steps. So, now today, so I told you what it's like when I came into recovery. Now, as a result of doing these steps, I now have I have a really good job where I just train as management. No, it's not in teaching because I'm not quite ready to go. I still could go back, which is great. God's still looking after me. How I still have a teaching license when I was behaving the way I was, I have no idea. But, I have a job where I'm just trained as management. It's full-time. The money's okay, but it's not about that. I have multiple service positions. I have multiple sponsees. I have multiple sponsors in true addict sense. I have a sponsorship sponsor is my original one, and I asked my friend who's female to take me through the shorter way so that I've got even more scope. I'm redoing my steps again because I want to keep. How can I transmit something I've not got? I do have recovery, but I fear that if that will go, my message will be dead to my sponsees. So I have to keep my recovery fresh in order to be able to give it away. So, I'm in a beautiful, healthy, monogamous relationship with a non-addict. That's amazing. A blessing. I really worked on and patched a lot of the damaged relationships up in my life with my parents. I'm allowed to see my nieces and nephews now. I'm an uncle that they trust. My brother and sisters trust me being left with their kids, which, that's a blessing from God. But also now they trust me that much, they'll give me all 4 at once. At least I can give them back. That's another blessing from God. There you go. Please take them back. 4 children under 4 is a lot. So any of the parents that have done that on this meeting, well done. But yeah, so love. I really have discovered what love truly means now, because my warped idea of it before was just transactional. Like anything, it was transactional sexual interactions, or it was, yeah, okay, I'll love, if you want the sexual thing, yeah, okay, I'll love you if you do this for me, or I love you because you buy me this, or blah, blah, blah. Or, even with my family, I expected them to love me, but I was never really showing up for them. But step 1, we had to make it real powerless. I think I've showed you my powerlessness and unmanageability. But this, you have to find love in acceptance. People talk about, step 3 a lot to do with acceptance, but I think you really have to accept in order for this program to work. You have to love accepting the fact that you cannot drink and you cannot use. And for me, step 1 and step 12 are the most 2 important ones daily, because 12 is how I get to keep it, by carrying the message. But if I at any point think that I have power back over my using, that's the rest of my steps and the rest of my sobriety gone out of the window. So I always have to, I tested that step 1 with 4 relapses and 22 years of using. Like, I keep that one so solid today. But I found the love in acceptance. It is really freeing once you finally hold your hands up and admit, I am unwell and I need help. And with step 2, when it talks about turning our will and our lives over to that's step 3, sorry. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It doesn't say believe, it says came to believe. This is about loving to trust the process. which ties in with step 3, which is, loving surrender, loving the act of surrender, because with step 3, I think about, am I in a state of compliance or surrender? That's how I, work my step 3. If I'm compliant, I'm compliant at work because my manager might let me go early. I'm compliant at home. I can call in a favor later. I'm doing something for some self-gratification or some reward. Full-on surrender, which I love surrendering, because I don't know about anyone else. As an irresponsible addict alcoholic, even though I'm accountable today, there's something freeing about, okay, it's not my day, it's God's day. What will be, will be. I take accountability for my actions, but I like it. I used to not want to take much control. So if you can just adjust that mindset to, okay, that's what surrender is for me. It's actually beautiful. And everything actually seems to work out okay. And if it doesn't, I can handle it. Just quickly, the power of this program. My dad got diagnosed with cancer recently. My stepmom just finished the radiotherapy. My grandma died earlier this year. I'm in the no matter what club. No matter what, I don't pick up or drink. I didn't use. I used to use on a Tuesday because it was raining. Like, that is massive progress. Thank you to the 12 steps for that. Step 4 and step 5. This is where I found love for myself again. I got to be hateful in my resentments. If you still got a heart full with hatred and you're on this step, have fun with it. You get to get all the anger and hatred out with your resentments. Then you just have to swallow that bit of pill and realize that actually the problem is with you, your mindset, and how you allow others to affect your mind and actions. But I really learned to love myself. And for me, with step 5, I had my spiritual awakening. I really learned the love of sharing my deepest, darkest things within that step. For me, I learned to love my own personal retribution and freedom and deepen my spirituality from sharing that step 4 with others. I've done 2 step 4s now because I'm going through it again. And it was beautiful. And step 6 and 7. Okay, I spoke about you really getting to learn to love yourself. And I think love your past with 4 and 5, but with 6 and 7, it's learning to love the here and now. I think those are the black healing steps people talk about. It's like spiritual ping pong. What am I stuck in and how do I get out of it? I learned to love humility through these because I have 6 and 7 available to constantly check myself. How my shortcomings going to get removed? How do I live in my character assets? And I pray for those. I don't pray for my shortcomings to be removed as much. I pray more for the corresponding addicts. So please help me to be humble. Please, Lord, help me to be grateful, more kind, tolerant, patient, more loving. We're nothing without human beings. We are creatures of love. That is what makes us human, I think. And so, yeah, then with step 8 and step 9. So I really learned to love forgiveness. And with 8 and 9, I loved it even more because a lot of the time it was me being forgave by others. But in me making amends, I'm not only forgiving myself, I'm forgiving the former version of myself. And I'm giving the opportunities for others to see that change within myself and how can I make it right for them. I've yet to have an amends where someone hasn't forgiven me, but I've had people that don't want to make the amends, but they're cool with it. But I'm willing to make everyone. And that's another thing. You have to just, if you're willing, half the job is done. And then with nightly inventory, what did I learn in this step? I learned to love daily accountability and checking myself because I have to do this. I need to get better with my nightly inventory because I'm not the best with it, but I utilize it as and when I need to. But the whole psychic changed for me. I used to get in so many arguments, like I spoke about police, things like that, constantly like causing a scene. Yet now I rarely get into any kind of bother with anyone because I'm very good at my on the spot amends and checking my behavior and pausing. That God pause is so profound. And then step 11, loving my spiritual journey. That is the love that I've got out of 11. I love praying. I love meditating. I've recently started exploring different ways to enhance, my spiritual connection and foster that and improve my conscious contact. Different forms of meditation. I recently got into breath works, prayers. Sometimes I write my own. I find different ones all the time. I do the regular ones. I love it. I absolutely love this. And if with spirituality, I just make things habitual. If you make things habitual, they will eventually become a ritual. And you can't spell spiritual without the word ritual. An example is my gratitude list. If you're early days and you're struggling, write a gratitude list, sit in silence for 5 minutes, say one prayer. You've done prayer, meditation, gratitude. And you keep doing the same things repeatedly, and they will become rituals. Which spells spiritual. And then probably one of my favorite steps is the one that's always ongoing is 12. I have learned to love others and learned to love service with this one. I love helping. I wanted everything from me when I was in active addiction, but I love the fellowship. I love all of you. I love being of service. I love helping my sponsees. I love listening. Sometimes it's not even about me actually doing it. I love sitting back and listening to another addict's story, another alcoholics. I get so much. That's what I told you. That's what kept me coming back in the beginning. And there's a whole host of things. But if I'm going to be completely honest, what keeps me staying? It's you guys. Like I could be stuck in South. I hop on a meeting. I'm thinking Lee's having his bad day today, and really nothing's happened. And then someone tells me some tragic circumstance to go through, and how they're still sat in a meeting smiling, and they've done X, Y, and Z, reached out to others and helped, and it takes me out of self. I have the 12 steps, God to rely on, and all of you to help keep me well. Today, I'm a very grateful recovered addict, and I'm going to wrap up my share because I feel like I've gone over. But what I'm going to do is, just before I go, is actually found a prayer.
You're good. You keep going.
Can I keep going? Okay, well, I'm going to do this prayer now anyway.
Keep going.
Hey Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
Okay, I'm still going to do this prayer anyway because I found this prayer, right? And it's around love. And I really like this. So my prayer is this. It says, Dear God, empower me with your light and remind me that I am good enough, that I am beautiful enough, smart enough, talented enough, brave enough, and strong enough to be me. I let go of self-doubt and negative chatter. Please wrap me in a comforting embrace now. Remind me to show up for myself, give it my all, and follow my heart's calling. I envision white healing light going into my heart, opening it up and pulling out any limiting beliefs and instilling in me your definition of self-love. Thank you, universe, for your greatest love, which is me. And yeah, anyone can take that prayer. It's not to sound like conceited or like arrogant when it says my greatest gift is myself, but I love myself today, and it's not in an egotistical way. I love the man that I've become. I love how I show up for life because I can sit on a meeting and I can chat 12 steps and I can chat fellowship, I can talk about this step, that step, etc. all day, every day if I wanted to read the big book inside out. But it says, and it speaks about a lot in the family afterwards. How do we know if our program is working? I'll tell you how I know. It's how I show up outside of recovery. How am I showing up for my employer? How am I showing up for my family? How am I showing up for my friends? That's how I know my program is working. And also, I heard someone say recently, and this really resonated with me. They said, I don't know if my program's working well because nothing's been put in my way to test it just yet. And I like that as well. Now, I have had things put in my way in this short amount of time that I've been clean and sober to test it, but I know it's working because it's never made me want to go back and pick up. But at some point, life is life. Parents will die. Like more loved ones will not be here. Jobs will be lost. Houses, move, all of life circumstances. But I do know this, that I never need to pick up. I never need to drink because all that hatred that I had in my heart that I was spoken about, I know that's not disappeared. My addict's mindset's not gone. I just do things every day to try and keep it to a minimum. But, right now, my addiction's doing bench presses right outside this door, just there, waiting for me to get weaker as it gets stronger. So I have to keep my spiritual cup filled. I have to make sure I have these resources that I can tap into so that I don't let the liar in my head win, because that voice is loud. But one thing that I've realized is the more I fill my life with love in all aspects, the smaller that voice gets. And it shrinks until it's something that you can override and control to some respect. But another last thing I want to touch upon to do with love, because I spoke about that I'm a sex addict. And another profound thing that helps me in my recovery was learning about, sexual interaction and love being a God-given power. My very last relapse in recovery, I actually chased down a sexual experience as an untreated addict, thinking I can't, don't worry, you're not going to get high. And I was high before anything happened. And my sponsor said, we're not the arbiters of anybody's sexual conduct. However, I suggest you maybe be celibate for a bit because you know that the blind spot with your last relapse was that it wasn't even drugs or alcohol. So I remember going to a meeting, practically crying, going, "No, I'm never going to be able to have sex because my sponsor says I have to be celibate." And someone said to me the same that I've heard from day one of recovery, but I've never applied it to the aspects of my life. Why don't you just do 24 hours? Wake up, do another 24. I went, oh yeah, I'm not an animal. I can do 24 hours. And do you know what? I was celibate for 5.5 months. And I'll just tell you a bit about my experience with that, because it says in the book that our sexuality and love are God-given powers that should not be used lightly. I used mine lightly throughout my life, as I previously discussed. It was not sacred to me at any point. However, this is the way I see it. Sexual energy is that strong that it can create life force. The whole reason that we're all sat now listening to this is because you're here, because presumably a man and a woman did it and we were born, we were created. Life force, that's how strong this energy can be. What I realized when I had my 5 months of celibacy to really work on my recovery, if you keep your hand firmly out of that cookie jar, imagine what other areas of your life that energy can transpire into, that God-given power. Within that time, I'd finished my steps. I was sponsoring. I got a promotion at work. I started going to the gym. I was looking better, feeling better, sleeping better, because I'd kept that God-given energy to myself. God allowed it to transpire into all these other beautiful avenues in my life. But it also, at the same time, was helping me to heal my addiction to validation. By the time I was ready to, have healthy sexual experiences again, I wasn't doing anything for validation. I applied the four absolutes. Was my behavior loving? Was it unselfish? Was it pure? And was it honest? And I could honestly say, yeah. And the promises keep coming true. You know, last year, long while after the celibacy, and a long while after just dipping my toe back in the dating pool, I ended up, God brought me a relationship with a non-addict who is so supportive of my recovery journey. And I'm really very grateful for learning about abstinence, not just from drugs and alcohol, but for me, from sex for a while, because it really helped me to get onto it, tap into a more God conscious outlook when it comes to my body and my mind. And do I treat my body like a temple? Nah. I mean, I eat healthy, but you know, I could eat healthier. I still like sugar still. I go through periods of not, but I wouldn't trade the life that I have now for anything. The peace that I have in my life, from when I wake up to when I go to sleep. You know, I'm a very grateful recovered member of CA's My Home Fellowship, but like I said, I go to A and CMA. With this program, I'd just like to say thank you on behalf of my family, because due to this program, my parents have a son back in their life that's present today. My brothers and my sisters have a brother that they're not afraid they're going to get another call to come to the hospital when I've overdosed or tried to take my own life. My friends have a friend that shows up that's accountable. My sponsees have a sponsor that's there for them, that shows up on time and directs them. My niece and my nephews get to have an uncle that's not intoxicated, that's present, that can laugh and joke, that is entrusted to look after them. That is one of the greatest gifts. Yeah, I'm a very grateful member of this fellowship. I think I'll leave it there.
Hey Reco12 Spearheads, if our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 Spearhead.
Wow.
You're a legend. Oh my God.
Thanks, Lee. Brilliant share, brother.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. This
So,
person should be celebrity, not some other people out there, empty vessels.
yeah, for sure. And what's so celebrity about that? Real celebrity, like you said, is that what you hear in Lee's recovery is honesty, humility. All starts with the punctuality, him showing up 10 minutes early for the meeting, integrity, spirituality, ritual, good habits, willingness, kindness. If you know your face, your radiance is shining. The four absolutes: love, the honesty, the tolerance. You said something really cool that made me think. We don't have so much time, although you answered so much without us asking. Can you hear me okay, by the way? Excellent. You said like something about like, I don't know how recovered I am. Like I didn't have trials that necessarily tested me or gave me a litmus test of how recovered I am. But how did you know the promises were coming true? Like, I had this thing happen just yesterday where, I felt like people in my office were a little bit like condescending, and I was asked to come to a meeting, and somebody who usually blows me off, which is fine, pray for him, was like talking my ear off for half an hour. And I had a thought like, that must be a recovery thing, that I'm a person that you could, ask to do stuff, that I'm a person who listens, that, he was just going on and on and on. But I was like, oh, that's interesting. He doesn't usually talk to me. What kind of things showed you that, once you got the spiritual thing in place, as our big book says, you were recovering physically and mentally? You spoke about a promotion, a raise, a healthy relationship. Gosh, that's actually a pretty long list. Family. Were there like little signs that showed you that you were on the right path?
I think, to be honest, if I take away all of the material or physical things that I gained in my life, I knew the promises were coming true for me when I was beginning to be believed, when my word meant something. So, for example, when the trust was coming back with my family, that was one of the first promises that I received, and probably the greatest one. Like when I used to relapse, obviously I'm a musician. So when I used to relapse, I used to say I was in the recording studio, but I don't live in New York City. I live in Manchester, UK. We don't have recording studios that are open 24 hours a day for 4 days solid. So in my head, I thought they really believed this lie. They didn't believe the lie. They knew that was like code for relapse. But, today, if I say to like my family, I'm at the supermarket, it could be 2, 3 a.m. I mean, I'm not awake at 2, 3 a.m. anyway these days, but if I was, I'd have said I'm at a supermarket. They don't even question that. They believe that that's what I'm doing. So the first promise I started to get back, and it's the one I want to foster the most, is that I got trust. People trust me now, which they didn't before. So I hope that answers.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Don't you find that when you're trustworthy too, people are also more honest with you? Like that's like a cyclical thing. Like it used to. How did it used to be that when you were in addiction and lying, that everyone was a liar, and all of a sudden, like you're like, well, people say they're going to do something, they do it. People say they'll give me something, they give it to me. Like, you find that?
100%, yeah. I think like I firmly believe in, and this is why, and it's not against any organized religion. If anyone's religious, I think we can learn a lot from them. It says so in the big book. Why I'm spiritual and maybe not religious is, I think spirituality offers you more of an understanding of karmic law and consequence. Like for every action, good or bad, there is a corresponding consequence, and that's what I try to tap into. The more honest I am, the more honest I get, honesty I get from others, and where it speaks about God removing, God will do for us what we can't do for ourselves. Certain people in that, the more I've stayed on this path, certain people have been removed from my life and new people have been placed in my path that are more spiritually aligned with myself. And I think another thing, I spoke about love. I don't want to make my answer too long, but one of another things that really helped me with that was when I sat down and did a sexual ideals list with my exercise with my first sponsor, and he said, I want you to pick 30 qualities that you deem ideal qualities in another human being. And then from that 30, pick your most important 12. Obviously, everything's 12 in this program. And once you pick your most important 12, when you're ready, because this was during my celibacy, when you're ready to start dating and things like that, use this as a way to, if someone's not got, no one's perfect, but if someone's not got 8 or 9 of those things, maybe out of your 12, then they're not spiritually aligned with you. And I love that it was said like that, because, that's what I guess I'm looking for in life now, spiritual alignment to things around me. And you know what? The more I trust in God in this process, it all seems to fall into place. Like I say, it's not my day, but yeah, definitely, I agree that I think people do become more open and honest with you, and because they've seen that they can be now.
I have to tell you something funny on that note, really something so funny that I haven't had a chance to share with anyone, but I know my recovery family will appreciate this. I also identify as a love addict, even though it was within marriage and totally kosher, but as someone's constantly seeking validation and love. And the other day, my boss was telling me she had a drink with a friend. And I said, "How's your drink with your friend?" She's like, "Oh, well, I'm not sure I'm interested in him." And it didn't even occur to me that that meant a date. So not in, in love addiction that I forgot that there's such a thing as a date. So I thank you guys for laughing. I knew you would appreciate that. It's like, but again, more hints that I've got my eyes on the prize. I'm focusing on my new job, which is to be of maximum helpfulness to God and his people. And when in the right time, and if in the right time that's on the horizon, it will be made clear to me, We don't have time for, I can't really hold you guys back. You probably have some questions for Lee. Lee, you're so fabulous. Who has a question for Lee?
Hey Lee, hey everyone, I'm Katie, grateful recovered addict. I love you, Lee, love to share. Thanks so much. Thanks, Karen, for putting on the meeting. You spoke about the step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when wrong, promptly admitted it, and your nightly review. And you said, you grassed yourself up. I'm not great at doing that review. Part of our program and our process tells us that we have to do these steps like in order and to follow the rules. Otherwise, we sort of miss something. How do you maintain keeping up your nightly inventory when you're not partaking in it on the nights that you do? Because your recovery's on point. So I'd just like to know, how do you do that? Thank you, Lee.
Yeah, I guess so. Thank you, Katie. Great question. She's done this on purpose. She's my second sponsor. She wants to know why I'm not going to be doing step 10. No. So basically, how do I do it? So, well, because I have done nightly inventory like multiple times. I just don't really do it that much regularly. But when I was doing it, I studied, I've studied a lot throughout my life, and it's kind of how I approach this program, like school, spiritual school. I study very much like the format of it and the character defects, particularly with the rapid step 10 one and the corresponding assets. I do a lot around 6 and 7 daily. And when I've wrote those inventories out, I don't just write them. It says review. I review them. I look through and I sort of make a mental note of the things that continuously come up. So I'll give you an example how I manage to work it more on a daily basis without writing it, and why I stay in my head like still practicing step 10 is because I'd looked for patterns when I was writing it. What are the same things that are coming up? What are the same things from 10 that I can put back into 6 and ask to be removed in 7? And my biggest character defect, and you know this personally about me, is taking accountability of the actions of others. That was the thing which come up again and again and again and again. So yeah, I might have this wellness and this spirituality, but I was still sat there going, well, if they just behave like me, or, I don't understand why they've done that, or blah, blah. And I'm like, hold on, do I not sit on meetings here talking about acceptance and surrender or compliance and all this stuff? Start walking what you're talking, mate. And so I think for me, I'm very much just aware of myself now, and I'm aware that so that I can quickly check when these things are cropping in. But I did a nightly inventory just the other week because I'm human and I had a very stressful day at work, and I got into it, which I've not done. I've argued with 3 people in the 19 months that I've been sober, which Katie knows all of them because I called her. And it was someone at work, and it was so minor, but I let my spiritual guard down and I reacted. And it says we should pause and not react. But I'm only human. Last time that happened was about 9 months prior to this, so it was inevitable. But I know I have these tools. I know I have this program. The thing I did right away was doing an inventory, sharing that with my sponsor, making amends. So I did them right away. But it's the 1st of August today. So do you know what? It's a new month. I'm going to set myself the 30-day inventory challenge, because on my gratitude list where I've got it in my phone, it says July gratitude and inventory, and there's my gratitude every day. I spoke about habitual spiritual ritual, and then there's an inventory every now and again, even when I feel like nothing's happened where I need to. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do one today. So if I really do review my day, someone at some point probably pissed me off a little. So I'm going to set myself a challenge and I'm going to do 30 days solid. And see, here we go. Looking forward to reading them. So my first resentment is against the lady that just asked me this. No, I'm only joking. But yeah, thank you for that. But I guess it's being aware of what your biggest character defects are, because they're never going to leave us. And the last thing I'll say is, I don't want my character defects to leave me. I just need to say that. If I'm a perfect person without any defects, how am I ever going to sit on a meeting and deliver a message? You're going to think, who's this robot? Who's this AI? I need to keep a couple of those defects so I'm human and so that a newcomer can relate to me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Can I offer you a suggestion? You've got a pretty good sponsor there. Can I offer you a suggestion for doing your nightly review?
Yeah.
Pray that God will help you do it.
Thank you.
I will do that. To help you. Yeah, you spoke about health food earlier, and it's like I've been in OA on and off and messing with my food plan. And one day I just prayed that God should help me. And an old friend of mine was doing like a raw food detox, and I joined that. And like, really just because of prayer, I stopped drinking Diet Coke, which I was like, pounding for 40 years, and got off dairy and whatever. I'm not proselytizing anyone, but it's like I had no plan to stop Diet Coke, which is totally not in line with my lifestyle of yoga, of wellness, of meditation, of recovery. But it's like God knows where I'm headed, and he just takes that away. He helps us get those, put that ritual in the spiritual. I love that. One last question before we go. I'd like to hear you then close out with some words of wisdom about working with others. I'm hearing you say, and I'm seeing your face, I see that that's the bright spot of your life. Let's close out. It's so appropriate to end this meeting with talking about the beauty of step 12, working with others.
Okay, thank you. So like I said earlier when I was speaking, my two most important steps are 1 and 12 for me. 12, I get to keep it by giving it away. And 1, the steps 2 to 11 and then 12 will never, ever be able to build if you don't have the most solid step 1 foundation. You have to just know you can never drink or use because you're powerless to it all. If I found a way that I could drink or use responsibly, I wouldn't be sat in this meeting. I wouldn't be sponsoring. I wouldn't need a program because I'd be able to control it, but I can't. But in terms of working with others, every time I work with somebody else, I take them through the work, or I'm starting a meeting and I, get to be of service, or even a speaker. If I do a main chair, I raise my hand. If just at least one person has felt something, a little bit of relief, maybe from their mindset, how they were thinking or feeling, or just taken one tiny little bit of anything from what I said, that means the world to me. We're mirrors. We're like a big disco ball of mirrors in recovery. You're the people that I cannot hide from. You see me and I see you. We see each other because we have this one thing that bonds us all, and that is that we suffer with the same spiritual malady. I spoke about it again earlier in my share. That's the one thing. It doesn't matter about our background, our gender, our ethnicity, sexual orientation, money, prestige, anything like that. At the end of the day, we're sick people trying to do well, trying to live a better life. And the importance for me, my biggest fear is never being able to work with anyone, because it's what keeps me well. I say it to my sponsor said it to me. My first sponsor said it to me when we first started working together, and I didn't get it then because I was early days. He went, it's helping me more than it's helping you. And I was like, what? How is you listening to me talk about my life and bring you up my problems helping? And I get it now. I look forward to my step work every week with my sponsees. I look forward to hearing from them. If it was just meant to be for you to be a recovery thief and do steps 1 to 11 and that's it, then there wouldn't be a step 12. The masterminds that wrote this book, knew that in order for you to help others and to keep it, that is what the whole 12-step program is about. It's actually not about sobriety. It's about helping the next. That's why we have, that's why reaching out is red. I made it into this program because someone else worked their 12 step on me. I must remember that and pass it on because it was freely given to me. We're not paying for this. We take donations. It's people are doing it for the love of it. It says in like I think it might be the prefaces, we're making avocation of it, which means we do it for fun and we do it for free. And so it's so important for me to work with others. And I know I'm going through my steps again, but I'm going to be finishing that soon. And then I've got till next year when every new year I'm going to try and redo them, see if I can discover something new. But I get to go through my own steps. And do you know what really does help me with my step one as well? When I have new sponsees that are either just, still in their step one, or learning about, it helps me to remember mine. Because the one thing that I hear the most from people that are like maybe like 20, 30 years is, and I've noticed this, is okay, it's only been 19 months, but the longer I've stayed clean and sober, the more I remember the good times. I have to remember the bad times because I don't want to ever think I can take my power back. And working with newcomers, that are very much step one, that really helped me to remain in memory of what it was like for me. And I never want to forget that, because the day I forget how bad it was is the day I think, okay, it's going to be different this time. It's never going to be different this time. So yeah, it's super important for me to be working with others. And the last thing I'll say on that is just to anyone that is new, I hear from people talking all the time about, oh, well, I'm going to have to wait till I'm on step 12 before I carry a message. No. If you raise your hand in a meeting and you do a 3-minute share, you could be saving someone's life with your words. You have carried it. It's step 12 is carry the message. That's it. It's quite broad. That's, that phrase, carry the message. You carry the message by raising your hand in a meeting. So you can be doing step 12, helping others before you officially on that step and through your step work. And I say that to people because sometimes I have got more from a 3-minute raised hand share of a stranger in a meeting than listening to a 45-minute main share. Sometimes. So step 12, you can have them at any time during your recovery. You don't have to finish the 11 steps in order to do it.
Yes, that's a perfect note to end on here, because well, Lee, I think I'd like to have you on again this year when you're ready to talk about that daily step one experience. I think that's a great topic that would be very beneficial. If I could give you that bit of homework to come back to me in a few months. And
yeah, of course, I'd be honored. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it would be our honor, a deep step one, daily step one, and a deep dive into that. And everyone else on the call, on the heels of what we just said, I invite you to come and share if you haven't. If you have, we'll have you in a few months. We'll be happy to have Katie again and anyone else who's shared in the past. If you have any sponsees who are newly recovered, get them on there. Get them cracking, even if they don't have their own sponsees yet. They might save someone. This makes a difference. This has a shelf life. Speaking of karma, my newest sponsee is a woman in Coda, over there on the other side of the pond. And she actually heard one of the mommy podcasts on Reco12 when we spoke about being a mommy in recovery. So, you all make a difference. This makes a difference. It will continue making a difference and paying spiritual dividends. You can retire off the royalties. And with that, I will ask you to please pray us out.
I will. I'm going to use, I read that other prayer earlier, but I'm going to do the Serenity prayer because it's the most beautiful one, I think, and I do it all the time. So we just take a minute just to remember there's still suffering alcoholic addict inside and outside of this podcast, meetings, rooms, anywhere in the world. Who doesn't need a sponsor? God. Grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. Please be with everybody today. Thank you.
Thank you.